Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering that the most important financial decisions affecting your life were made last night. No election, no debate, no vote. Just a quiet meeting somewhere between Zurich, New York, and Singapore. And by the time the news reaches you, it's already too late to change anything. That's not a dystopian future. That's the present. Financial power is quietly shifting away from democracies, not through coups, not through conspiracies, but through incentives, math, and systems that reward speed over consent. And the unsettling part is this. Most people think this shift is happening because democracy is failing. It's not. It's happening because finance stopped needing it. This matters right now because the rules that once tied money to voters are breaking apart. Governments still campaign, parliaments still argue, elections still happen, but capital has learned how to move faster than all of them. For most of modern history, financial power lived inside borders. Money was national, banks were domestic, debt was issued by governments that answered, at least in theory, to their citizens. If voters were angry, governments paid a price. If governments made reckless financial decisions, markets reacted slowly. There was friction. There was time. That friction was democracy's leverage. But that world doesn't exist anymore. Today, financial power lives in flows, not places. It moves through balance sheets, swap lines, clearing systems, and code. It crosses borders in milliseconds, and it answers to risk, not voters. To understand how we got here, you need to understand one simple shift. Democracies govern people, markets govern money, and money figured out it doesn't need to wait. Let's start with the basic promise of democratic finance. You elect leaders, they tax, they spend, they borrow when necessary, and if they do it badly, you replace them. That system assumes one critical thing, that governments control their own financial destiny. But control has been slowly outsourced, first to bond markets, then to central banks, then to global financial plumbing that most voters have never heard of. Take government debt. When a democracy issues debt, it's not just borrowing money, it's making a political promise. We'll manage this responsibly because you can punish us if we don't. But modern debt markets don't wait for elections. They react instantly. Interest rates rise, currencies fall, capital leaves. And when that happens, governments don't negotiate with voters anymore. They negotiate with markets. That's the first quiet transfer of power. Then came central bank independence. On paper, this was a safeguard. Keep monetary policy away from political pressure. Prevent reckless money printing before elections. Stabilize the economy. And for a while, it worked. But independence slowly turned into insulation. Central banks gained the power to set interest rates, control liquidity, and backstop markets. They became the ultimate crisis managers. During every major shock, the 2008 crisis, the Eurozone crisis, the pandemic, the pattern was the same. Elected officials argued, central banks acted. Trillions appeared overnight. Markets were stabilized before parliaments finished debating. This wasn't illegal. It wasn't even secret. It was efficient. And efficiency in finance beats legitimacy every time. Here's the uncomfortable math. Modern economies run on debt. Not a little, a lot. Governments can't fund themselves through taxes alone anymore. They rely on constant borrowing, rolling over old debt with new debt. That only works if markets believe the system will hold. So when markets panic, democracy becomes a liability. Debates take time. Votes create uncertainty. Elections introduce risk. Markets hate all three. So power flows to whoever can act fastest. That's why financial decisions increasingly happen in places with no ballot boxes, clearinghouses, central bank committees, international institutions, private risk desks. Not because anyone planned it that way, but because that's where stability lives now. There's a quiet irony here. Democracies didn't lose power because they were ignored. They lost power because they were trusted. Markets assumed governments would always step in, always backstop, always prevent collapse.
And because that expectation became permanent, governments lost leverage. Now let's talk about the part nobody likes to say out loud. Global finance doesn't care if a system is democratic. It cares if it's predictable. Authoritarian states figured this out early. If you can guarantee capital stability through control, reserves, or sheer force, markets will work with you, sometimes eagerly. Democracies, on the other hand, are messy by design. Policies can reverse overnight. Voters can reject austerity. Protests can shut down economies. From a human perspective, that's a feature. From a market perspective, it's a bug. So financial power drifts towards systems that minimize surprise. This doesn't mean democracy is doomed, but it does mean it's losing its monopoly over legitimacy. Now compare the public story to the private reality. Publicly, we're told financial systems are accountable, regulated, transparent. Privately, the real decisions happen through technical mechanisms most people never see. Swap lines between central banks, emergency liquidity facilities, regulatory exemptions during crises, accounting rules quietly rewritten under stress. These aren't debated on campaign trails, they're negotiated at 2 a.m. And once they're in place, reversing them is almost impossible, because the system now depends on them. Here's where the stakes rise. When financial power shifts away from democracies, accountability doesn't disappear, it just changes shape. Instead of voters punishing leaders, markets punish countries. Instead of political consequences, you get capital flight, currency collapse, credit freezes. And those punishments hit ordinary people first. Higher prices, job losses, cuts to public services, all without a single vote being cast. The unsettling question isn't whether this system is fair, it's whether it's reversible. Because once finance decouples from democratic control, reattaching it is brutally hard. You'd need slower capital, stronger borders in finance, limits on leverage, constraints on liquidity. In other words, you'd need to make the system less efficient, and that's a hard sell in a world addicted to growth. There's a quiet absurdity here. Democracies are blamed for instability, but instability often comes from trying to appease markets that can never be fully satisfied. The system demands constant confidence, permanent growth, zero surprises, and democracy, by nature, can't promise that. So financial power keeps migrating to places where decisions are faster, quieter, and less accountable. Not because anyone planned it that way, but because that's where stability lives now. And now we're at a crossroads most people don't realize exists. Do democracies adapt to financial speed, or does finance continue to outrun democratic control? Because if nothing changes, the future looks oddly familiar. Elections that matter less, policies constrained before they're proposed, governments managing optics while real power sits elsewhere. Not taken, not stolen, just relocated. So here's the question worth sitting with. If financial power no longer needs democracy to function, what exactly is democracy supposed to control next?